Good evening, friends. Tonight we're going to be learning chapter 3 of Eruvin. Tonight's study is dedicated in loving memory of my dear mother, Rivka Bas Harav Shlomo. We're going to be discussing laws that pertain to an Eruv. Specifically, we're going to be talking about Eruv Tchumen, and other Eruvim as well. But mainly, we're going to be talking about an Eruv Tchumen. Eruv Tchumen is the following idea. One is not allowed to leave his place of residency and his city and just go wherever he wants. Person has to stay put on Shabbos. So what does this mean practically? So wherever a person lives, a town that he lives in, for example, he has 2,000 cubits distance. Amos.
Amos is an arm's length, not a cubic foot.
No. Cubits. Distance.
Cubit. Amos cubit.
So, now, 2,000. He cannot go beyond that boundary. Okay? Now, and this applies regardless how big his town is. So if he has in a large town in the middle of nowhere, so he can walk all over the town, and then beyond the borders of the town, he can go an additional 2,000 cubits. Now, what happens if a person lives in a house that's in the middle of a desert? Let's say, for example. So now his house there's no town. So his house is ground zero, if you will. And he can go 2,000 cubits in all directions. There is an idea which the sages established that would allow a person to double his distance in one direction. And that's called an Eruv Tchumen. Now, what essentially he's doing is he's establishing his residence, or an honorary establishment of his residence, 2,000 cubic feet, or up to 2,000 cubic feet in one direction. So let's use, for example, a person lives in a town, and he wants to travel an additional 1,000 feet to the north past the Tchum. So normally he would be able to go 2,000 cubits, and now he wants to travel 3,000 cubits. So what he would do is 1,000 cubits into the past the perimeter of the town to the north. What? No, 1,000. If he only wants to go 3,000. I'm using an example. He only wants to go. So 1,000 cubits is where he would establish his residency. I'm going to explain how he does that. And so then he can go up to 3,000 to the north, and he can only go 1,000 to the, whatever you gain in the north, you're going to lose in the other directions. Now, if a person were to take all 2,000, so he establishes his honorary residence 2,000 feet to the north, he cannot even go out of the city or out of the town to the south or any other direction, even 1 cubit foot. Because he took all of his extra. So essentially, by establishing your residency there, so now you're losing it on the other side. Make sense?
So it's not a carte blanche to walk around wherever you want. Not at all.
No, it's only in one direction. So if there's a town that's 2,000 cubits beyond the Tchum, beyond the boundary of Shabbos, so if he put it exactly at 2,000, he would get himself another 2,000, which gets him to the next city. And then in that city, he can walk wherever he wants. So that's the idea. And how does one establish an honorary or a temporary residence outside his town? So he does this with food stuff. He places some food there. Or alternatively, he goes there by foot. He stands there as it gets dark. So
right.
What?
Friday night.
Friday night. So let's say you don't have food to establish this tchum. So a more difficult solution would be you actually walk there and you're standing in the place that you're establishing your temporary residence on the eve of Shabbos. Shabbos comes in and you're standing there. Now you have 2,000. You can go an additional 2,000 feet or whatever it is.
But he has to walk to 2,000.
Before Shabbos. You would have to have been there before Shabbos.
But can you go home now that Shabbos came?
Once Shabbos came, now he can go there. Same thing is with food. He could put food there, and then once Shabbos comes in, it gets dark, he can eat the food, and then go home. And then the next day, because once it's established, that's where his home is. Now he's going, makes sense?
Setting food out on the way is like an ancient way of travelers providing for
This has
wayfarers.
Right. What this has to do is nothing to do with wayfarers. This is establishing your residence. Now you're not actually making your residence there, just like you have an Eruv around the town. You're not actually putting an actual border around the town. It's a symbolic gesture. So by making the symbolic gesture of placing food at this junction, now you're establishing that this is where I live. And now you have an additional 2,000 feet to go. And again, because it's not a city where you've made your Eruv, it's in the forest or wherever it is. So you don't your Dalet Amos of where you made your Eruv, that's your home. Now you got another 2,000 Amos to go, and that's how far you can go.
And it doesn't matter if somebody else or some animal.
We're going to get to that. Aleph, let's study the Mishnah. Bakol Ma'orvin u'Mishtatfin. The Mishnah begins and says that you can make an Eruv with any type of food. Not only that, you could also do a shituf, shtufei mavois. When you have an alleyway that has houses and courtyards that go off of that alleyway. We spoke about this in the past couple of weeks. So there you wouldn't make an Eruv Chatzeros, you would make a Shtufei Moivois, you're making a partnership of courtyards that lead into an alleyway. So that's a similar, it's different than an Eruv Chatzeros. And we're going to get into that in a minute. We'll get to that at the appropriate time. But a Shtufei Muvois is a type of an Eruv. So says the Mishnah that you can make an Eruv with any type of food, as well as you do this Shtufei Muvois. You can also make the Shituf Eruv with any type of food. Chutz min hamayim u'namelach, except for with salt and with water. Because salt and water don't provide any nourishment for people. And so you're establishing, by establishing any other food, putting any other food there, then you can use this for your Eruv. And all of this can be purchased, nikach bekesef meiser. You could, nikach bekesef meiser, any foodstuff could be purchased with any meiser. We're talking about here, of course, what kind of meiser? Meiser sheni. That's correct. Meiser sheni. Meiser sheni was given in the first, second, fourth, and fifth years of the 7-year Shemitah cycle. First, second, fourth, and fifth. First, second, fourth, and fifth. So what you do is you take this Meiser Sheni and you bring it up to your Shalayim and you eat it. But if it's a lot of things, it's a lot of food, it's a lot of produce, a lot of grain, so what do? You sell it and you take the money up to your Shalayim and you use those monies to purchase food stuff. So now...
The coin doesn't get any of that, right?
No, this is not about the coin.
No,
This has to do with... This goes to anybody.
He's going to make sure. I'm sorry.
Shumos is for coin.
So now, the Mishnah is telling us that a similar halacha, that you can buy any food whatsoever that you want to buy, that you can eat, you can buy with Meiser Sheni. Chutz min hamayim u'namelach. except for water and salt. Why? Because it doesn't provide nourishment for the same. So it's the same reason, same thinking. Further says the Mishnah, Haneider min hamazain, person who vows to abstain from muzzing, from nourishment. It says, I'm going to abstain. A person takes a vow. I'm going to abstain for nourishment for the next day. It's a fast of sorts, but a regular fast, you can't eat anything or drink anything. But here he didn't. He said, I'm going to fast. He said, I'm going to abstain from nourishment. He's making a neder. Mutter b'mayim of a melech. So in such a case, he's allowed to eat salt and he's allowed to drink water. Why? Because these don't. Again, the same theory, same idea, and that is water and salt are not considered nourishment, and because they don't nourish. The Mishnah continues. So we said that you can use any foods for an Eruv Tchumen here. So now says the Mishnah, Ma'arvin l'nazir b'yayin. Mishnah says you can use wine to make an Eruv for a Nazir. Now, what is a Nazir? A Nazir is not allowed to drink wine.
Yeah.
So according to the Tana here, because even though a person can't drink wine, a Nazir cannot drink wine, nevertheless somebody could drink wine. And being that somebody can drink wine, who can drink wine?
Anybody except him?
Anybody who's not a Nazir. Very good. So since somebody could drink the wine, so therefore since someone could drink it, you could use it as an Eruv, even as an Eruv for a Nazir. Well, Yisrael, but Truma, and this Tana says that Truma, which is a portion that's separated, 1/50th, between 1/40th and 1/60th of produce is separated for the Kohen. That's called Truma. Truma is holy, and only a Kohen who is pure can eat this Truma. So now a Yisrael can't eat the Truma, but nevertheless you could use Truma to make an Eruv for a Israelite who can't eat it. Sumcha says B'chulin.
It must be at night that he's not by himself.
What?
It must be at night that he's not by himself.
Doesn't have to be a Tanai that he's not by himself.
Otherwise, it's not for him.
The point is that it could be drunken over Shabbos by somebody. Somebody could go there.
It's like you have truma in your house.
Obviously, it's within the tchum of his town, so somebody else can get there. Because if it was past the tchum of his town, he wouldn't be able to do it. You can only make the Eruv within a permitted distance.
But the idea is for him to have the additional.
Not necessarily. That's according to this.
That's why in the
That's-
first place he went there.
He's establishing his house. How does he establish his house? By putting food. So according to this Tana, it doesn't have to be food for him. It can be food for somebody else, so long as it's food. You make it. That's what this Tana says. Now, obviously, you hold like Sumchas, because it seems like you're making faces here that you don't like what this says here. Sumchas Eimer b'chulin. Sumchas says chulin. For a Yisrael, you would have to have chulin, non-consecrated food that he can eat. You see, even Sumchas would say that wine for a Nazir is okay. Because in theory, the Nazir could have a Rav or a small Bezdin be Mavatal his Nazirus. Since he can have a Mumcha be Mavatal his Nazirus, so he, in theory, possibly could also drink this himself. But when it comes to Truma, if you're a Yisrael, you're a Yisrael. There's no way for you to eat the Truma. I mean that there's no way for you to eat the Truma. So what does it gain? What have you gained by putting food that's for a Kohen there? He can eat it, but you can't. So again, so there's an argument here between the Tanakama and Sumchas. So Sumchas would agree, as the Gemara says, with wine for a Nazir, because he can technically there's a possible way for him to drink this wine, but for Truma, there's no way for the Yisrael, so it would not be acceptable for him to use Truma. Now, what happens if outside the town there's a Beis Apras? A Beis Apras is a field which a grave had been plowed over, and because we're concerned that fragments of a bone, the size of a barley corn, is now somewhere we don't know where in the field, so a Kohen would not be allowed to go there because he's not allowed to be He's not allowed to become Tomei Meis. So now, since a Kohen can go there, this is a rabbinical injunction that if you plow, we don't want you plowing fields with graves in there till the grave is removed. And if you do that, the whole field becomes a Beis Hapras. So now, this becomes a Tomei Misafik, if you will. So now a Kohen is not allowed to go there. So the question is can we establish for a Kohen he sends an emissary, an agent, to put foodstuff in a Beis Hapras so that he can walk. So the answer is, over here, according to this Tana, yes, you can. Rabbi Yehuda says, Afilu b'Beis HaKvaros. Rabbi Yehuda says, not only on a Beis Hapras is, he's not allowed to go in a Beis Hapras, this is only a rabbinical injunction. Rabbi Yehuda says, even if he can send somebody to put an Eruv for him, even in a cemetery, which according to the Torah, he was not allowed to be going in there. Why? Because he can go, he can make a partition, and he can go in this partition. So, if you have a partition that's 10 tefachim high, around you, you can go to, a Kohen could walk through a cemetery. Now, this is not suggested under normal circumstances, but in addition, the partition could even be of people. So if you have people standing around the Kohen, shoulder to shoulder, you could walk him through a cemetery because now there's a fence around him. And again, don't do this at home. There's no Kohanim here. But before you actually do this, you need to know the particulars of exactly how this is done.
Israel put food.
So now you're putting food in a cemetery.
So the Kohen could walk.
The Kohen could walk through there if he uses one of these aforementioned partitions. So Rabbi Yehuda says even in a cemetery he can go. Now, Ma'orvim b'dmai Mishna Beis. You can make an Eruv with Demai. What is Demai? Demai is produce which was tithed by an Amaretz, by an unlearned person. So Rabbi Yochanan Kohen Gadol and his Bezdin established a rule that because the unlearned people were lax about tithing properly, so they said if an Amaretz gives you produce and he says, I tithed it, it's all good, you don't believe him. It's called Demai. Demai is, perhaps it wasn't done correctly. So it goes into this suffix, if you will. It goes into this category called Demai. Now Demai, there are times when you can eat Demai. There are times a pauper can eat Demai, for example. There's other times that Demai is allowed. So they only established their prohibition in certain cases, and in certain cases they did not establish it. So a simple case is a poor person could eat Demai. Because since the Amaret said it's kosher, Meiser was already taken, so they didn't impose the Demai restriction on a pauper. In any case, what about making an Eruv? You're a wealthy guy, and now you have Demai. Could we use Demai for it? So says the Mishnah, you could use Demai for an Eruv. Over Meiser Rishon, Shenitla Trumasei. Now this is a little bit complicated, this one. Meiser Rishon is, first you take Truma, which is between 1/40th and 1/60th, depending how generous you are, and you give that to the Kohen. Then you give Meiser Rishon. Meiser Rishon is 1/10 of whatever's left over after Truma. After that, the Levi, you give that to the Levi. The Levi then takes 1/10 of that, and that's called Trumas Meiser. So now we're telling you a story here, we're telling you a law that seems to be quite obvious. Meiser Rishon shenitla trumasei. Meiser Rishon, which is the Meiser that you gave to the Levi, and then the Levi took the truma, so it's obvious. Now it's chulin. Now everything's been done. So what's the issue here? So obviously you could use that for an Eruv. What else could you? That's obvious. So says the Gemara that the first tithe had been separated before the grain had been threshed and prepared for storage. Since it wasn't required to be at that time. So before threshing, the obligation to separate truma and the other tithe is not yet in effect. So when the obligation of tithing takes effect, the produce already has the status of the first tithe, and only the tithe of the tithe, but not the regular truma, needs to be separated. Which means you bypassed the normal order because you gave this truma because the tithe had been taken beforehand, prematurely. So now, even though that this is a weird scenario, nevertheless, says the Mishnah, you can still use this for an Eruv. Kohanim b'chala over truma. Kohanim. Now, obviously, this is according to this opinion here. Kohanim, chala. You give a portion of each dough to the Kohen, so he can use this for his Eruv. And Truma, he can use it for his Eruv too. Again, this is according to Sumchas. This is going, because according to the first...
Is he a Tana?
Yeah, yes, of course.
That's his name?
Yes, Sumchas.
Okay.
So according to the first Tana, anybody, even Truma for Yisrael would be acceptable. According to this Tana here, only for a Kohen could use Truma. Avol, however, but not a Yisrael. So, and again, he's obviously holding according to Sumchas and not according to the previous Tana, the first Tana of the previous Mishnah. Avol, however, everyone agrees, Leva Tevel. Tevel is produce that has not, that the tithes and the Truma have not been separated yet. Nor can one use for an Eruv. A Levi cannot use for an Eruv his Meiser before he is given the next Meiser, the Trumas Meiser, to the Kohen. The Lever Meiser Sheni, the Hegdish Niftu, nor can one use Meiser Sheni that has not been redeemed yet. You have pure Meiser Sheni, and you haven't taken it up to Yerushalayim yet. In Yerushalayim, obviously, you can eat it, but outside Yerushalayim, you can't eat it. So this is foods that cannot be eaten. Since it's food that cannot be eaten, so you can't use it for an Eruv, because the idea of an Eruv is that it can be eaten. And certainly not Hegdish. Hegdish is consecrated produce that's been donated to the Beis HaMikdash, and it wasn't redeemed yet, so it belongs to Hegdish. It doesn't belong to you. So obviously, since it can't be eaten by anybody because it belongs to the treasury, the temple treasury, it can't be used. A person who sends his Eruv in the hands of a deaf mute, an imbecile, or a minor, or in the hands of somebody who doesn't admit he's a Sadducee, he doesn't believe in the rabbi's establishment of Eruv altogether. Ain't an Eruv, so you can't make an Eruv in such a manner. But if you instruct somebody to receive it from him, and that person will then make the Eruv, then it's an Eruv, because there's a person who's appropriate to make the Eruv, actually made the Eruv. So it doesn't matter who you sent it with, so long as the person who receives it now makes the Eruv on your behalf. The son of Elon, if a person put it into a tree, now what's the problem in a tree? He can't climb up the tree.
Oh, very high, because I've seen him in trees.
Or he puts it higher than 10 tfachim. Ain't an Eruv. It's not an Eruv. We're talking about an Eruv Tchumen here, not the Eruv, the string Eruv.
Oh, no, I've been in the country, and you see Tchumen there, but it was in a tree. I mean, where else are you going to put it? You can't put it on the ground.
Well, we'll get to that in a moment. Ain't an Eruv. Ain't Eruv Eruv. If he puts it lower than 10 fists high, 10 tfachim, his Eruv is not an Eruv. Lamata Masar tfachim, Eruv Eruv. Lower than 10 tfachim, it is an Eruv. Nesane Babar, if he puts it into a pit, now it's low, so it's below the ground. Afilu Amak Meyama, even if it's 100 cubits deep, Eruv Eruv, it's an Eruv. Nesane Veresha Kana, Veresha Kundas, if he puts it on top of a pole or on top of a reed, Bisman Tolish V'Naotz. So if this reed was already cut from the ground, right? And now you stuck it into the ground, so are you allowed to pull this out on Shabbos? You're allowed to pull it out on Shabbos because it's already, you're not cutting it out of the ground, it's already in the ground, it's just stuck in the ground. Or it's on a pole, and this pole can be taken down on you. Now you can grab your Eruv. I feel like even if it's 100 cubits high, Harei Eruv, it is a good Eruv because he can get to it.
What you just said, below 10 tefach.
Below 10 Tvachim. It has to be,
Tvachim is like 31 inches.
yeah, so it's got to be low.
But you said 100, even if it's 100 cubits.
Because we're not talking about on a tree. We're talking about on a pole or a reed that's disconnected from the ground. So you can pull it out and then,
It has to
you
be
know.
lower than 10
The son of a migdal, if a person put it in a,
tower.
doesn't mean tower here. Migdal generally means a tower. It means a locker or a chest. V'avad ha'mafteach. And the key got lost. Harei Eruv. This is an Eruv. Now,
What's the idea? It has to eat it.
right, so the idea here is that the lock was made in such a way that this is not simple. The Gemara explains what's going on here. That it's made in such a way that the person would, that if he cut the ropes that are holding it together, he would be able to get to the food. So it's again because if he can't get to the food, everybody admits and everybody knows it's clear that you can't use this as an eruv. The question here is if you're cutting the ropes is only the rabbanan. You're not allowed to cut ropes. You're not allowed to demolish things, but cutting ropes would be a gzeira de rabbanan. So since by bein hashmoshes, it would only be a shvus. He would be able to, in theory, get to this food. So therefore, since it's only a violation of the rabbanan, the eruv is still an eruv. And again, it requires further clarification. You got to learn the Gemara, which we're not doing right now, but let's leave it at that. Rabbi Elazar says, if he doesn't know that the key is in place, so which means he doesn't know that he can actually get to this eruv, so then it's not an eruv because again, he didn't realize that this food is accessible. So his mind doesn't realize that he's established his temporary place there, his temporary abode there, because he doesn't even think he can get to it because he doesn't know that the key is there. So he thinks that there's no access to this food. What happens? Niskalgal chutz latchum. What happens if before Shabbos came or before nightfall came, it rolled beyond the tchum? An gal or a rune fell on top of it, a bunch of rocks fell on it, a nisraf, or it got burned, a truma v'nitmes, or if it belonged to, or if it was truma and it became tamei, while it is still daytime, ain't a eruv. It's not an eruv. Why? Because in all of these cases, the food is not accessible. If it happened once it was dark, so once it was dark, regardless of the fact that now it can't be eaten, doesn't matter. Because it's already dark, it already established his eruv there. Harei eruv. This is an eruv im safek. If it's a safek, so he doesn't know if the rune fell apart, or if any of these aforementioned cases happened before Shabbos or after Shabbos started. So Rabbi Yehuda says, Harei chamar gamal. This is a donkey and a camel. What does it mean, a donkey and a camel? It's an interesting expression. A donkey is guided from behind. A camel is led from the front. So, which means now a person who wants to lead a donkey and a camel, it's very difficult because he has to lead this one from behind and he has to lead this one from the front. What the point here is that we don't know. He has to have all the stringencies of that eruv was made, and he has to have all the stringencies that the eruv wasn't made. What are the stringencies of the eruv that it's made? So, if it was in the north, so whatever he made it in the north, whatever he gained in the north, he lost in the south. But he didn't really gain anything in the north because we don't know if it actually was an eruv. So he has both. He gets both the short end of the stick on both ends. Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Shimon, Rabbi Yosef and Rabbi Shimon say Sfeik eruv kosher. They say that being that the whole institution of eruv is only with the Rabbanon, the rabbis, according to Rabbi Yosef and Rabbi Shimon, established at the outset that a suffix eruv is an eruv. That's according to their opinion. So it doesn't matter that it's a suffix. They established that a suffix is an eruv. Amir Rabbi Yosef says,
as long as it happened on Shabbos, as long as it happened on dark.
So long as there's a suffix, if there's an eruv there, regardless of why there's a suffix, there's an eruv there. We don't know what happened. There's a suffix. We don't know. We don't know. So a person walks out to his Eruv and now it's rolled beyond, or now a rune fell upon it, or now an animal ate it, or whatever it is. I don't know when it was eaten. Was it before Shabbos, after Shabbos? I don't know. So now it says, so there's a dispute here. Rabbi Meir, Rabbi Yehuda says you gotta treat it as if it was and it wasn't at the same time. Rabbi Yesi and Rabbi Shimon say it's acceptable, and Rabbi Yesi furthers, Avtulmeis Heyid Mishum Chamishas Kenim. Avtulmeis testified in the name of 5 elders, al sveik erev shekosher, that a sveik erev that it's kosher. Masna adam alei ruvei v'himer, a person can now, according to this Mishnah, can make a stipulation and say, Im bo oiv de kechavim min hamizrach, if Gentiles come from the east, these are Gentiles who are going to harass him, and he wants to go the other way. A person could say this follows: Im bo oiv de kechavim min hamizrach, if they come from the east, Evruvi Lamairav. So in other words, he's going to set up 2 Eruvs before Shabbos, one to the east and one to the west. And he makes a stipulation. If the Gentiles come on Shabbos from the east, so then I'm using the Eruv from the west. And if they come from the west, Min Amairav Eruvi Lamizrach. And if they come from the west, then my Eruv is to the Mizrach. In Bo Mekanu Mekan, if they come from both directions, Lamokim She'eretz Ha'elach, then I'm going to go whichever way I want. So I have 2,000 that way, 2,000 this way. So at least I can't go 4,000. I'm sorry. I'm going to choose which one I got. I'm going to choose which one I want. So according to this Tana, I can make any stipulation and then I can choose on Shabbos which one is the one that I want. If they didn't come from any direction, I am like the rest of the people in my town, which means I have 2,000 in any direction I want. In Bo Chacham and Mizrach, you can make a stipulation if a sage comes from the east, Eruv in the Mizrach, so then my Eruv is in the Mizrach.
In these cases, is an actual Eruv established, or you're presuming it's an Eruv?
No, he has to put the Eruv there in both places.
Oh, one there, one there.
One there before Shabbos. And then he says, if a sage is coming from the east, I want to go greet him, I want to go honor him. So I'm going to go past the Eruv. So if
IRS comes, I go the other way.
Yes, but
IRS comes from that way, I go the other way.
Yes.
That's what he's saying, right?
Yes.
Okay.
In Bo Chacham and Mizrach, if the sage comes from the Mizrach, so then I'm going to have my Eruv in the Mizrach. Min Amayrav in the Mayrav, if he comes from the west, I'm going to go to the Eruv in the Mayrav, and then I'm going to establish my Eruv in the west. Bo Lakan or Lakan, if they come from this way and that way, the man is stipulating. L'makim she'er tzeilich, I'll go whichever way I decide on Shabbos. So again, since he made it in both ways, he can now choose, according to this Tana. Lo Lakan v'lo Lakan, if there's no sages show up, I'm canceling all my Eruvs. And I can go in any direction I want. 2,000 Amas. Following, Rabbi Yehuda says, if one of these rabbis was his Rebbe, his teacher, so then he can only go towards his rabbi. If they're both his rabbis, he can go either way he wants. So again, according to this opinion, you can make stipulations, make multiple Eruvim, and go in multiple directions, or cancel out your Eruv on Shabbos. Rabbi Eliezer Eimer.
So the Eruv around here.
This is the different kind of Eruv. Yes. Rabbi Eliezer Eimer. Rabbi Eliezer says, what happens when you have a Yom Tif that's near Shabbos, so it's either Friday or Sunday, whether it's before Shabbos or after Shabbos, there's a Yom Tif attached to it. Rabbi Eliezer says, Ma'arvin Adam Shnei Eruvin. He makes 2 Eruvs. Va'omer, Eruvi Harishon LaMizrach. He can say, the first for Shabbos or for Yom Tif, whatever comes first. Let's say Yom Tif comes first. So he could say, for Yom Tif, my Eruv is in the Mizrach, is in the east. And my second Eruv, and the second day, is for Ma'ariv. For Shabbos, it's going to be in the west. Or vice versa. Harishon LaMa'ariv, Hashem LaMizrach. He could do this. Or he can say, the first Eruv, the first day of this 2-day Yom Tif, which is Shabbos and Yom Tif together. For the first day of it, I have an Eruv. And the second day, I'm like the people in the town. Or he can say Eruv Hasheni, or he can establish that his Eruv is for the second day, and the first day of this 2-day holy days, Shabbos and Yom Tif together, he is like the townspeople. So again, he can cancel. In other words, he's looking at this and saying that both of these days are separate. Each of these 2 days are separate one from the other, and he can make an Eruv for one and not the other. The Chachamim and the Chachamim say, Ma'ariv l'ruach achas, they can only make an Eruv for one direction. Ma'ariv kol ikor, he can make no Eruv whatsoever. In other words, the Chachamim are saying that they're both considered one day. So it's both considered one unit. Meaning they're one unit, so either you make it in one direction or in no direction. That's it.
Is there such a thing as a tchum on Yom Tov?
Apparently there is. Or he can make for 2 days. But or he can make nothing at all. Now Kate said, Yaseh, so what does he do? How does he do this? He goes, he takes his Erev on the first day before the first day starts, whether it's Yom Tov or Shabbos. And he becomes dark there. If it's Yom Tov the first day, so he can carry on the first day, so then he can take it with him. And then Basheni, he can use the same Erev on the second day, because before Shabbos, so before Yom Tov on Friday, before Yom Tov on Thursday, he takes his Erev to the to the place, and it becomes dark, and he can now carry it back home because he's allowed to carry on Shabbos on Yom Tov. And then on Friday he can do the same thing again and use the same Erev. And the second day he goes there into this place, but he can't take it back with him because it's Shabbos. He can't carry on Shabbos. So what does he do? He eats it once night falls. Therefore, he can benefit with his walking area, and he also can eat his Erev. He can also gain one Erev for 2 days. If it was eaten on the first day, the same Chachamim who said that it's one unit, they still say by that if he ate it on the first day, it can't be used for the second day. Cannot. Omer Lahem, Rabbi Eliezer says to them, hold on one second, now you're telling them that they're 2 separate holy days. So make up your mind. His point is his point, but they disagree with him. So they're saying that from a doubt. In other words, they're using it as according to the Chachamim, apparently, they're saying it's doubtful as to whether it's considered one holy period or whether it's not. So therefore, we have to treat it with both stringencies.
Definitely 2 periods because you make a Havdalah.
Right, but it's right. It's 2 periods in that respect, but in respect in terms of an Eruv, is it 2 holies or not? And being that it's a doubt, so you have to make the Eruv twice, and you can't make it in 2 different directions, so you can't split it, but you have to have the Eruv, you have to establish it both times. Interesting. Zayin, Rabbi Yehuda says, Rosh Hashanah on Rosh Hashanah, that a person is afraid that maybe it's going to be an Iber month. So we establish El could be 29 or 30 days. So all other holidays we know in Eretz Yisrael we know when it's going to be, but in Rosh Hashanah we don't know when it's going to be. So we have to have 2 days of Yom Tov for Rosh Hashanah, even in Eretz Yisrael. So says the Mishna Eruvin, a person could make 2 Erevs and say, in such a case, he can make 2 Erevs and he could say that for the first day, my Erev is in one direction, and then the second Erev is for another direction, because it's not 2 holy days. There's only actually 1 holy day. But we're only practicing 2 days because we don't know when it is. Now, even in Eretz Yisrael, because now it's considered 1 long day. Back in the day, it was 2 days. One was a doubt, and one was actually Rosh Hashanah. So a person could say, according to Rabbi Yehuda, he says that Rosh Hashanah it's not like a Yom Tov and a Shabbos. It's you can absolutely split it, but the Chachamim say no. Again, it's considered a doubtful status as to whether it's 1 long day, whether it's 2 separate days, and therefore you cannot do that. We have just 2 more Mishnahs. We'll try to finish up here. Rabbi Yehuda says, Masna Adam al halkalkola v'yom tov arisha. Any Yom Tov, a person, the Chazal made a prohibition against taking separating Meiser on Yom Tov. So now, Rabbi Yehuda says a person on the first day of Yom Tif, he doesn't know if today's Yom Tif or tomorrow's Yom Tif, right? So now we have 2 day Yom Tif. Out of doubt, we don't know which day is Yom Tif. So on the first day of Yom Tif, a person could say, he could take his basket, he could separate Meiser from the basket and say, if today is Yom Tif, so my action is nothing. If today is weekday, really, so then tomorrow my Meiser was already taken. Then on the next day, what does he do? He says, if yesterday was weekday, so I'm eating, so my action that I'm about to do is nothing. And if yesterday was actually Yom Tif, so yesterday was nothing, and now these same tithes that I separated, these are Meiser. So Rabbi Yehuda says, on the first day of Yom Tif, he can separate the Meiser, and then he can eat it on the second day based on the procedure that we just explained. And then he can go ahead and eat this on the second day of Yom Tif. Similarly, a chicken that gave birth, that laid an egg on the first day of Yom Tif, he could eat it on the second day with the same stipulation. And the Chachamim did not agree with him. Why? Because they did not allow this separation out of doubt. Rabbi Deisa ben Hyrcanus says, since we don't know which day is Yom Tif, on Rosh Hashanah that's either one day or the other day, Hachlitzeni Hashem Elokeinu es Yom HaChedesh, Yom HaReish HaChedesh hazeh, im lemacher yeh oimer im hayem im emesh. He says that when you're davening on Rosh Hashanah, or any Rosh Chodesh for that matter, but he uses Rosh Hashanah as an example. So you say, if today is Rosh Hashanah, so then bless today as Rosh Hashanah. In your davening, you basically announce that we're not sure if today is Rosh Hashanah or yesterday, or we're not sure if it's today or tomorrow. The Chachamim didn't like this because they said if you're going to daven that way, people are going to treat the holiday of Rosh Hashanah lightly. Why? Because we're not even sure if today is Rosh Hashanah. So in other words, according to the Chachamim, when you daven on a day that you're not sure if it's Rosh Hashanah or a holiday, you daven regular, like it's Rosh Hashanah, and therefore people will treat both days with the proper respect. Please join us again next week on Wednesday at 8:30 as we continue with chapter 4 of Masechtas Eruvin. Have a very good evening.